Hello fellow X-Files, and welcome to the X-Files Revisited, where we have fun looking at and breaking down each and every episode in this series. Now before we begin, I have a question for those in the audience. Why don't aliens visit Earth? Because we have a 1-star rating! Oh, we like to have fun here, don't we? Speaking of fun, today we're looking at Young at Heart, episode 16 of season 1. Debuting on the Fox network on February 11th, 1994, Young at Heart follows a crazed killer thought to have died in prison, who comes back from the dead to wage a murderous vendetta against Agent Mulder. Will he succeed? Well, if he does, then that's the end of this video series. The episode begins at the Tashmoo Federal Correctional Facility in 1989, located in
Pennsylvania.
A prisoner, Joe Crandall, who for some reason is allowed to just wander the halls, hears some loud screaming coming from a nearby room. Entering the room, he finds Dr. Herbert West ready to reanimate yet another corpse.
You'll never get credit for my discovery. Who's going to believe a talking head? Get a job in a sideshow.
Crandall asks what he's doing to John Barnett, and the doctor Joe Ridley threatens him with a scalpel.
I said John Barnett is dead. You understand?
So we have two men named Joe right off the bat. The writers were really trying when coming up with names. Crandall turns to the body of Barnett, and despite being told he's dead, Barnett blinks. We're in present-day Washington, D.C. as everyone's favorite dynamic duo arrive at a jewelry store robbery conducting actual FBI work for once. Inside, we meet Mulder's former partner, Reggie Perdue.
Reggie.
Oh, I hate it when you do that.
Quick with the pleasantries, Reggie informs them a gunman shot a saleswoman after she filled a bag for him, but he left a little something behind for Mulder.
White male, 5'11" to 6 feet, ski mask.
Damn it, Reggie, that's Barnett.
Scully, not knowing what the hell is going on, has Mulder explain to her that Barnett was his first case in the Bureau. Mulder tried creating a trap, but Barnett was far too clever, leaving notes, mocking and antagonizing him.
Fox can't guard the chicken coop.
Clever, huh?
Barnett was caught, but Mulder blames himself as an agent lost their life in the process. But of course, nothing is as it seems in the world of X-Files.
So you think he escaped?
No, that's just it. He did die in prison 4 years ago.
Mulder brings the handwritten note to an Agent Henderson, a forensic handwriting analyst who is a little inappropriate.
10 minutes may be enough time for you, Mulder. Of course, I wouldn't know that from personal experience.
Yeah, seriously, what do you think?
Well, she's 95% sure the note was written by Barnett, and unlikely it was a copycat. Reggie is showing Scully the footage from a security camera that caught the arrest of Barnett, and it appears as though Mulder is right behind him.
So Mulder did shoot Barnett.
And then for some reason the security camera footage goes from being a wide shot to suddenly focused in on Mulder. Back at FBI HQ, Mulder receives Barnett's death certificate, so case closed I guess, he's obviously dead. Mulder, visibly shook by the whole thing, has Scully tell him he did the right thing, but Mulder still blames himself for the other agent's death.
Steve Wallenberg had a wife and 2 kids. One of his boys is an all-star on his football team now. I pulled that trigger 2 seconds earlier and Wallenberg would be here to see his kid play.
We're at a kid's football practice / mud wrestling as the field is more mud than grass. Mulder watches, hoping that they can cover the spread. He heads back to his car where he discovers a note and some pictures of himself.
I'll get you, you son of a bitch!
What are you waiting for, huh?
Then we see a creepy white eye that could possibly belong to a deadite.
What happened to our eye?
Back at FBI HQ, and Reggie thinks someone is toying with Mulder. Mulder is adamant, however, that it's Barnett, because during his trial he told Mulder he would come back for him. Reggie at this point has just had enough of this bullshit.
A lot of people are saying that Spooky Mulder has become an embarrassment, a liability.
What? Are you saying that somebody from the Bureau's behind this?
Maybe, maybe not.
Scully comes in just in time for this love fest to inform Mulder that Barnett had been cremated and left what little of his belongings he still had to another prisoner named Joe Crandall.
Bart's teacher is named Krabappel? I've been calling her Crandall.
Mulder goes to a woman to age up a photo of Barnett, and I also get stuck when having to create a new character. We then get a flashback to the day of the trial. Mulder goes over the day they caught Barnett while Barnett just stares at him like a smug pile of shit.
You shot him without hesitation, without conscience, without an ounce of humanity.
Your Honor, do something.
Which is why you should die like an animal, you son of a bitch.
Mulder sits down next to Reggie and Barnett tells Mulder that he will get him. Back in the present, and Scully finds Mulder to inform him that they claim Barnett had died of a heart attack. However, according to medical records, he had been admitted to the prison infirmary for an infection in his right hand, but no mention of coronary complications.
In fact, on his physical 6 months earlier, he was given a clean bill of health.
The agents arrive at the Tashmoo Correctional Facility so they can have a word with Crandall. Crandall tells the agents he knows Barnett wasn't dead. He witnessed a doctor remove his bad hand and saw the man's eyes blink.
I saw him looking at me. I saw him blink.
Back at the FBI, Mulder gets a phone call from a long-lost friend.
Fox Mulder.
Barnett?
I want to trace.
You sound surprised.
Surprised? Not really.
He tells Mulder he stood next to him when Mulder got his coffee this morning and is everywhere Mulder is. Barnett hangs up before they're able to trace him, but Mulder plays back the phone call they recorded and he's sure it's Barnett.
Listen to this.
Jeff Munson here. You like watching people get f***ed for free? Watch me f*** up Mark Kerr for free on DonKingTV.com.
That night, Reggie gets a call from Mulder, who tells him he just got a call from Barnett, and I think Reggie is just getting too old for this.
I'm too old for this shit. I'm too old for this shit.
Opie, I think I'm getting too old for this stuff.
I'm getting too old for this shit. I'm getting too old for this shit.
Reggie tells Mulder to go home and get some rest when a figure appears behind him. He's grabbed and choked with what looks to be some kind of a webbed monster hand. So Barnett is actually the Gill Man, I guess. Well, Barnett leaves a note while Mulder just yells into the phone.
Reggie! What happened? Hey, Reggie!
Mulder and Scully arrive at the crime scene and people from their past really need to stop showing up because it never seems to end well for them. Scully still doesn't think it's Barnett, but Mulder points out the note that was left. Mulder brings the note back to Agent Henderson to identify, and she believes it to be from the same person. She does note that the writer is likely not wearing gloves, but the fact that there's no fingerprints is suspect. Mulder meets back up with Scully and she tells him that Dr. Ridley hasn't officially been a doctor since 1979.
What do you mean?
His membership expired and wasn't renewed after the state of Maryland revoked his medical license for flagrant research malpractice and misuse of a government grant.
He had been conducting experiments on children with progeria, and imagine if we still held doctors that experimented on children to those same standards today. The agents arrive at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, where they speak to an unnamed doctor. He gives them the basic rundown of progeria and how Dr. Ridley believed that he could slow down the disease.
I knew Joe Ridley. He didn't care about those kids. He talked about them as if they were laboratory animals. This terrible disease, progeria, he saw it as a wonderful opportunity.
That sounds like the government.
Dr. Ridley was such a pile of that behind his back they named him Dr. Mengele. He eventually lost his license because he went ahead with the human trials despite being told not to. Mulder believes Ridley has found a way to reverse aging, and why has the video turned into 80s VHS quality all of a sudden?
Maybe we're not looking for a man in his late 40s after all. Maybe John Barnett has found the perfect disguise. Youth.
Back to the character creator, and they decide to make Barnett look a little younger this time. Meanwhile, Scully is typing up her report, but it looks like Gilman is about to pay her a visit. I mean, he does have a thing for attractive women. Scully hears a noise and grabs her gun while music from The Omen plays. There's a knock at her door, but Scully isn't alone as Barnett watches her. She opens the door and it's Dr. Ridley. Barnett, realizing that two's company and three's a crowd, sulks off in the dark. Suddenly Mulder is there questioning Ridley where he's been.
I originally continued my research in Mexico, but for the last 3 years I spent my time in Central America.
Ridley claims Barnett is the only patient he's had that survived, and he himself is conveniently dying of the same rare disease that the children afflicted with progeria have. John Barnett, however, is his one success, well, except for his eyes, which for some reason don't take to the gene therapy. He starts speaking science mumbo-jumbo that I'm not intelligent enough to understand, but he was able to grow John Barnett a new hand, but not exactly a human hand.
What kind of hand did you grow?
There's been some successful work done in London by taking samples of what we call cell morphogens from an amputated salamander arm and applying.
So John Barnett is part salamander now. Still not as creepy as those giant ones from China, though. Ridley claims the US government funded his research, and does it really surprise anyone at this point? Later at Cheers, Deep Throat arrives to have a little powwow with Mulder.
You, of course, know that Barnett stole all of Ridley's research.
Yes, Ridley
Well,
was...
what Ridley doesn't know is that our government is bargaining with Barnett to buy it from him.
So despite murdering many people, including several agents, the government is willing to look past those minor infractions and are willing to deal with him in order to get the research. Back at Scully's place and her phone rings, but because she's in the shower, she misses it and notices something really weird about the messages.
Retrieving messages.
Hello, Mother. Hello, Father. Here I am at Camp Granada.
She brings her answering machine to Mulder and tells him she heard someone put in her private code for her answering machine and thought she heard someone in her apartment the night before.
John Barnett's left index oblique is on the underside of this unit.
The agents get a call and it's Barnett just moaning in the phone like he's the killer from Black Christmas.
Hello? Hey, quiet! It's him again! The Mona!
He tells Mulder he's going after Ridley and the rest of Mulder's quote-unquote friends. Mulder asks Scully what was on her answering machine, and she tells him she's supposed to be meeting a friend at her cello recital. So obviously the agents are going to go try and spring a trap there. Mulder and Scully hand out the composites of Barnett and floor plans of the building.
We know that if he shows, he'll be keying on Scully, so wherever she is, she should not leave your sight.
Scully is obviously nervous as she's being used as the bait.
It's the first time I've ever played the target.
Let's make sure it's not the last time.
Let's make sure it's not the last time. Now I know he means they don't want her to die, but you could also take it as if he wants her to be the target again. Maybe he wants her shot, or it could be some kind of a weird fetish for him to see Scully in peril. Mulder is canvassing the area when he literally walks right by old Salamander Hand, and maybe it's just me, but he kinda looks like a young Paul Rudd in this shot. Or just present day Paul Rudd, because the guy doesn't seem to age. Mulder goes out to the lobby and gives Scully the old wink to let her know she's okay. Barnett then places a gun in the front of his pants, and he better be careful Batman isn't around, otherwise he's gonna have to sit down to pee. Barnett makes his way to the lobby where he pulls his gun and fires at Scully. Mulder chases after him into the theater, and for some reason Mulder yells Barnett, but his audio is cut out. He takes a woman hostage, and now Mulder is in the same situation he was the first go around. Barnett starts to mock him, saying he can't shoot him as it goes against protocol, and if he does, then he'll never get the research. But Mulder isn't f***ing around this time.
Just like old times, huh? Huh?
He shoots, hitting Barnett somewhere. Meanwhile, Scully is coming to, and thankfully she had a bulletproof vest on. At the emergency room, Barnett is being operated on, and why is cigarette-smoking man just allowed to be in the operating room with no mask covering his face or anything? Scully arrives and Mulder says she's lucky to be alive. Barnett, however...
What about him?
Now, they flew in 3 specialists to try to save his life. That guy in the ugly suit there is probably CIA.
Also, where was Barnett shot exactly? I don't really see any bullet wounds, and the blood all seems to be on the left side of his body that would have been covered by his hostage. Did Mulder shoot her too? Well, it doesn't look like Salamander Hands lived this time, taking the research to his grave. Or to a lockup at a train station.
Maybe he didn't get his revenge from beyond the grave, but somehow I feel like we haven't heard the last from John Barnett.
And unfortunately, Mulder, this is in fact the last time you'll ever hear from John Barnett, as he never appears again in the series. And well, that was Young at Heart. A pretty good episode with a decent enough antagonist, and yet another episode in which we have characters surface from our agent's past who are quickly dispatched so we never have to worry about them again. At some point, one of these newly introduced characters are going to stick around though, right? The idea of an anti-aging procedure or potion is like the holy grail of research, so it's fun to see when it falls into the wrong hands. Although I think had the government gotten control of it, it would have been in even worse hands. It is a shame Barnett never makes a return at any point because I think he was a good foil for Mulder. Young at Heart currently sits at 7.3 in IMDb, a solid rating for sure. The footage of the young girl with progeria was of a little girl named Courtney Arciaga. Herself and her family were such fans of the show that they were flown to Vancouver to shoot the scene. When they filmed the scene in which Barnett strangles Reggie, they had to shoot and get as much coverage from different angles as possible as they were worried Fox's standards and practices department would make them cut it. Which is funny when you think of the stuff they can get away with on TV these days. The episode features some nods to the classic story Frankenstein, including a disgraced doctor performing unauthorized experiments, grafting body parts onto a dead body. And in one scene, Ridley even claims people called him Dr. Frankenstein, which is odd because we all know Frankenstein is the name of the monster and not the doctor. Dick Anthony Williams played the role of Agent Reggie Purdue. Born on August 9, 1934, he got his start in the 1967 TV series Dragnet and had a long career in film and TV, playing roles in films like The Jerk and Edward Scissorhands. He passed away on February 16, 2012 at the age of 77. Alan Boyce played the role of young Barnett, and he really didn't have much of a career in Hollywood. He was in a film called Nowhere where he played a character named Handjob, and no, I'm not making that up, along with the starring role in a little film called 7 Minutes in Heaven, alongside a young Jennifer Connelly. However, it appears to be a forgotten movie that Warner Brothers A. could care less about as the trailer looks like it was filmed off someone's TV, and B. removed the obvious boom mic scene in the trailer. Young at Heart is a solid episode that starts off more as a standard police show and then turns into what we all expect from the X-Files. You really can't go wrong with watching this one though. If you enjoyed today's video, well, the great YouTube gods demand engagement, so please hit like. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of today's episode, and subscribe if you would like more videos like this. Check back next time as we look at a really awesome episode, EBE, which introduces us to the greatest trio of dorks to have ever existed, the Lone Gunmen. Thank you all for watching and stay spooky.
Part human, part creature, all killer. The only people who have seen it are dead.
Somebody from the Bureau's behind this?
Friday.
I'm everywhere you are.
It's looking for Agent Mulder.
You're a dead man.
The X-Files, Friday at 9, 8 Central on Fox.